Hello and welcome back to the Dirt Racing series. You're joining us in Season 3 over Christmas 2022 and we're catching up midway through the season. Apologies that we've not covered it earlier, but I've been taking a little time off the bike. But we're joining midway through what is an interesting start to the series. We're going to be joining the EMEA West Col de Solaire group in the B+ division to start with. We've already had 2 races so far, so we'll jump onto the team standings so you can see how they've ended up. So in first place so far we've got Valhalla, Grandbiter, a renowned team, raced together a lot, and they're leading with winning both races, 40 points. Dirt Cobra Kai are in second, and BZR, the winners of our first ever series, for Dirt Racing Series, are in third. Okay, taking a look at the individual standings, currently led by Greg Pierce. From Valhalla, Benjamin Buckby, who won comfortably on the Innsbruck KOM race. Being a lightweight rider and doing really well at the KOM, is in joint. Well, he's in second, joint on the KOM points. Got Sandro Huber from Pain Caves in third. Mark Vermeer from Team NL Netherlands in fourth, and Mark-Jan from Eagle Fang in fifth. If we haven't taken a look down the points, see 104 points down in 26th, 107 in 25th, all up to 239 first place. So it's quite a tight spread so far, as you've had one ITT and 1 points race. The ITT over the London 8 reverse course, which is the opposite direction of Box Hill. I think that was won by Rob Book from one of the dirt teams. But it's been an exciting start so far, with everyone up there now. Valhalla have taken a little bit of a lead, but it is very tight. So moving on to what we've got for you in store today. Today we're doing 8 laps of the Queen's Highway. That's the anti-clockwise direction of the top part of the Yorkshire circuit. So we're just doing this little loop. It's not quite as hilly as the rest of the Yorkshire circuit, but it is very up and down, with some 3-4% plus gradients, but nothing too outrageous, not the 15 to 20% we see on Potts Bank when we do the full circuit. We're going to have a segment every other lap, so starting on the first lap, then we've got the third lap, 5th lap and 7th lap. We're going to have segment points. So starting off with FTS, should be able to see on your screen. On the first lap, foul points. On the third, which first across the line, FTS is fastest through segment, so that's going to be the fastest time through the segments, whereas first across the line is as it says, first riders across the line. You can see the scoring on the right hand side. And the breakdown, the points go quite deep and important, especially for first across the line. It's really important to be picking up those lower places. The top's beneficial, but those lower places really start to add up. And then obviously at the end we've got the finish points, which will be finishing at the same segment. It's an uphill segment, it's quite long, around 400 metres. So it'll be very interesting to see how it plays out. So there's a little dip in the middle of it, so whether you might see some early attacks trying to go very long on it, or some people just trying to hold wheels and then sprinting at the end and coming through for the win. It'll be very interesting to see how that ends up playing out. I think it'll be a bit of an attritional race. If you have a look at the course profile in the top left, so we start off with a bit of a down. Well, that's not quite true. We do start off with a bit of a downhill. In the map, you can see the pens just at the bottom right hand of the map. You can just see the top of them. So we come in off a detour onto the course, downhill onto the pens, and then we get onto the course itself. So we have a bit of an uphill first, bit of a long climb through to the sprint banner, and then we've got a nice downhill back to this kind of crossroads section. So it's a very up and down course, kind of course of 2 halves. You've got a long uphill with a few kind of flatter sections, but generally it's a bit of a steady climb, followed by a downhill and a small amount of rolling parts to the bottom. I think that long kind of uphill will slowly start to lose rides, especially with the sprint at the top. And I think the key for those riders who might not necessarily be competing hard for the points, but want to get finish points, is managing to hold on through that sprint segment and on the downhill. Because once we're rolling hard on that downhill, especially the last section, which you might be able to see is very steep, it's going to be very hard for riders to get back onto the pack. So we'll jump onto the race now and see how we're looking. Got 2 and a bit minutes to go to the start. I see a lot of teams already in the pen. One thing not many Zwifters kind of take advantage of these days is getting in the pen very early. In a small race with, 20, 30 participants, it doesn't matter too much. But in these bigger fields where you're looking at 40 to 80 you start 10-15 meters back. I mean, when you look at events with 400 or 500 riders, it can make a massive difference. You can be 20 seconds down before you cross the banner. But even in these events, managing to start on those front few rows can be very beneficial. We all know that Zwift races start with a big old push. They can be very aggressive to start with. So being on that front row, being able to draft the entire way, not having to chase, especially on this one where we're going into a downhill, we don't want to be chasing on that downhill. You want to be in position and able to get a bit of rest before we have this brutal uphill that we're going to face every single lap. Just to take you through a few of the teams so far. So Eagle Fang is, I believe, in the lava kit. We'll just see if we can zoom into it. So I believe this is the Eagle Fang. Sorry, totally wrong. That's the Cobra Kai kit. In the lava kit, Eagle Fang will be in the dirt community kit. As you can see the right, you can see the Team NL kit. The blue kit towards the front with the orange top. Valhalla Groundbite with these two people in the middle of your screen now. I'll just try and zoom on. So that's your Valhalla kit. Just says on the top there. Very nice, simple kit. So they're our current leaders, so you want to keep an eye out for them. You've got your SDW, Southland. I can't remember what the full name is. It's South London District. God, I'm going to get told off for this. Apologies. Quickly double check. Julian will not be impressed. The Southborough and District Wheelers riders. You might see Julian running off at the front early to get a good photo of everyone. It's very much known for. And then we've got the Level Vela Racing, which is this yellowy orange, green, bright yellow, fluorescent yellow, shall we say, just there. So as we start off, see a lot of riders pushing a bit, but it's not as an aggressive start as we see in some races. Everyone knows we've got flats to begin with, a bit of time before it gets into the proper course, into the difficult sections, and no one wants to blow themselves up here with the sprint coming up very early on in this race, on the first proper lap. So, just a reminder from the first 2 weeks, started off with the London 8 reverse course with Rob Book coming in first, Joey M in second, Greg Pierce, Valhalla in third, Markin in fourth, Sandro Huber from Pain Cave Heroes in fifth. See many of those riders in the top 5 individuals. And then on the Innsbruck KOM, see that Innsbruck Ring after party course, we've got Benjamin Buckby and the Valhalla riders in first, Greg Pierce second, so he's 2 podiums so far for Greg, really good to see. Bosco Aribe, another Valhalla in third, Mark Vermeer, Netherlands in fourth, and Christophe de Grom in fifth. To start off, see quite a lot of the Level Vela riders towards the front. Not quite sure, I'm just keeping an eye on things. See, as you've taken this turn, just zoom out on the mini-map for you so you get a bit of a feel for the course. So we're onto the course itself now. Not onto a full lap yet, this is just the lead-in so far, so there won't be any sprints here. But we're going to start onto the uphill section very soon. We've got a little bit of a downhill up ahead, and then we're into the proper climb. You see, it's only 3% through here, but it can be enough to start to fatigue the legs. In the pack, we see people riders, some riders doing below 3, some pushing 4 a little bit, but it's fairly steady so far. See Ian just moving up through the group. And at the front, not doing much. See Ian there just relaxing. He doesn't need to be on the front itself. He's just keeping forward, got to the front, relaxed off again. See, here's a little downhill we've got. And then now we get into the climb itself. So it's nothing crazy. I feel almost loath to call it a climb, but it will impact the legs and start to wear people down. The other direction is much steeper. So you get up to about 7% here, but only for a short bit, and then into some flats again. See some sparks from the lava socks, fire socks. See that when riders go above 6 watts per kilo. Very nice effect, but maybe not the best in terms of tactically, giving away when you're making a burst or pushing through the group, and even worse, some classic Zwift coding, where they've decided it'll still work with the ghost power up. So maybe not the best one to use in that situation. See a couple of riders spreading out a little bit to begin with. but not too much going on. Let's take a look who's chilling towards the back. So we've got some Cryogen riders, Dr. Watson from Valhalla, Gunther from Cryogen, and Markian. Rob Pace, Cobra Kai, all just chilling towards the back, not doing too much. Nothing crazy is going to happen here, so most of the riders will want to just be sitting back and just relaxing, doing as little as they can while staying in the pack, and possibly getting a little recon. So here we're coming up to what would in other laps be the sprint section. You can see the start of the banner, we're coming up to about 3%, which is quite important. So if you're not actually accelerating on this first section, you will lose time. It is important that you're still doing some work, but it is a long segment, so we go into a little downhill here. So for me, I think the key would be pushing hard on that section, then relaxing through this, making sure you have a wheel, and as we turn this left-hand corner, going all in for a big 5-10 second push towards the line. So it gets up to 5%. This is where it's going to really be decided, especially at the finish, but also on those segments. But you've got to be in that position, and people will be going early, so if you can grab their wheel without doing quite as much, you're going to be in a good position. And as we come through this banner, it starts to go into a little downhill. It's not too crazy straight away, but you might be able to see it has a little jink in the road ahead. It goes round to the left, then a turn to the right, and then turn to the left again. As we take that second left-hand turn, the 90-degree one, that you might be able to see coming onto your screens now at the end of the road, that's where the downhill begins, and that's where if you're off the back, you're going to be in a lot of trouble in later laps. Be interesting to see if we can get up to super tuck speed. See, it's only -2%, so for the beginning of this, you might just be able to get back on. But when you can see there's a little kind of change in the angle of the road, see a tiny bend up ahead, that's where it gets a lot steeper downhill. Normally if you're coming the other direction, you really want to punch up there. You see speed's getting to about 50. Spectres, we take this left-hand bend, you see a lot of people stopping, pushing, and going into super tuck just to save that little bit extra. Just watching Rob here, he's just moving through the group even at 2 watts per kilo, that's enough. See, there we go, -5% down here. I want to see people dropping down to 0 watts per kilo, there we go. 1 or 2 super tuck, you can see one of the Valhalla guys, a couple of the BZR guys, and Cobra Kai riders, and then out again here. Again, it's quite fortunate here that it's not as brutal. If you don't get out in time, you're only on 0%. So it's not going to be make or break, doesn't matter. The super tuck is very much a good option to take there, just to get a bit of extra rest. So coming around, we're on to the first proper lap. And so this segment, just take a look at it on your screen for you. So it's going to be an FTS segment, fastest through. So you might see riders starting to drop to the back, not on this part, but at the next section of climb. And just trailing off the back to get as much lead in as possible. The concept behind that is you have a lot more draft in front of you. The more riders in front of you, the more chance that you're not going to hit the front, which slows you down significantly when you're sprinting. So you see riders really kind of fighting to stretch it out of the back, getting one of those positions. But that can also come with issues, where if you get too far back, you can find yourself dropped off, especially if someone ahead of you has a stronger sprint and opens the gap up. It doesn't tend to happen in a lot of races, but when you're in smaller groups of really strong riders, it's definitely a possibility. Let's see. One tactic that we might start to see, especially on the later FTS segment, is riders attacking just on this section of climb here. They'll be very aware that riders are going to drop to the back to try and get FTS points, although most likely they will be set this lap. Sorry, the FTS is per lap. I always make this mistake. So it's the fast through segment on each of those laps. But you might see riders pushing the pace up here. See Barham going from Southborough Wheelers, followed by another one of his teammates. And this is the perfect time to kind of push it. Even if, you know, you're not going for the sprint, or even if you're not a stronger rider, if you push off the front, you give yourself a lot more room for when the sprint happens, because you can guarantee there are going to be some riders flying through really quickly. So dropping to the back, follow Sully for this. And we've got Greg as well. So you see they're dropping right to the back. It's important that they don't lose too much connection here. See Sully's going very early. It might be a little bit too early. See Greg, if he responds, is going to have his wheel. See Sully just eased off a little bit there. And now they're going. Lots of people hitting the 12s. Sully's just bopped off a little bit too much. Not sure what he's trying to do here. Needs to be a bit of a stronger kick and then relaxing here. See a couple of riders going maybe too hard on this downhill section. It's really important that we carry the speed on the second half. This way, see the top guys are really going to be caning it here. It's just DW, Rob Pace really pushing hard. Lots of people going all in here. Let's see where we come. So we've got Cobra Kai in first. Not sure who that is so far. So Johnny, is it? Not sure who that is. Cobra Kai in first on the dirt teams. Crutzen, Team NL, I think, in second. And the Valhalla in third. Greg Pierce in fifth. Eagle Fang in fourth. TFC down in sixth. Iron from Cobra Kai. So good points for Valhalla, good points for Cobra Kai. Eighth for Valhalla as well. It's good showing from Cobra Kai and Valhalla there. Again, as we talked about earlier, it's really important in these segments that you have multiple people scoring. As expected, we've got quite a few riders off the back there. Let's see, we've lost SDW rider. Lost any of the teams fighting. Level riders, Collins. That'll be disappointing for them. Who have we lost? One of the Eagle Fang riders, Tommy. He's going to be gutted with that. And Julian's off the back as well for SDW. So not a great segment for SDW. They had rider up there scoring, but two off the back, which is going to hurt them later on. Now the question is, can they start to chase this down? Just seen a little group of three chasing down. Lots of those riders in the front group are going to be tired. They have nothing really to push for this lap. The next segment's going to be on the, not this lap, but the one after, where it's going to be a first across the line. So the only advantage is for teams who know that their main opposition have dropped a couple of riders. See, KST have lost a couple. So those teams around them might be wanting to do a bit of work on the front to try and hold them off, but it's probably a bit early in the race to be doing that. And the riders chasing are going to be fresh enough that they can get back on. Suspect we'll see there's a big enough group here that it will close back on. We get a 5-second gap at the moment. Let's take a look at the front, and you should be able to see that people aren't really pushing too much. See everyone in the ones here, that is a bit of a steep downhill. But you see still 2s, 3s at most. No one's really doing any work. I suspect we'll very much see this chase group coming back on. So there we go, made uncomfortably. Good work from the SDW and level Velo riders. Mainly to jump that across the Eagle Fang. And Cobra, not quite sure what's going on there. Maybe in the wrong kit there. See, a lot of the Eagle Fang riders dropping towards the back. No need to do too much. See a couple of riders pushing the pace, but it's all connected up. One big bit of advice when you're riding is take a look at how the shape of the group is. When you see it stretched out like this, very long, narrow, you know that the riders at the front are pushing. It's spreading out. When you see it bunching up, getting wider, you know that the front's slowing. You don't need to do too much work, but this is a point where you might want to just be doing a little bit. You see a couple of riders pushing up to 4 or 5 at the back. It's a little bit nervous going into it. It is connected, but you don't want to be the one who gets caught out by someone ahead of you not holding a wheel. See one of the BZR riders in Cryogen up the front, just really pushing the pace. Baker from Cryo. And Thales from BZR. I'm not sure what the purpose of this is. Maybe he thought it was a sprint segment. Sometimes people do get confused with the numbers on which lap it is, so potentially they went for that, or they're just trying to push the pace, make a breakaway. This is a course where a breakaway is possible, but on this part it's going to be very difficult with the group speed chasing on that minus 2% downhill. So he's got about a 3-second gap, which is going to be nowhere near enough for this downhill. I'd expect maybe 5 to 10 seconds, probably around 8. Is what you need on this downhill to keep away by the bottom, with, you know, a 2-3 second gap still. If it gets below a 2-second gap, most people give up and people try and bridge across, and that's usually the end. 1 or 2 people trying to bridge, as we see here on the Valhalla riders, will just jump across. At that point, any kind of breakaway is going to be shut down, because if he doesn't make it, someone else will push to hold his wheel, and the group speed just goes up and up and up. So for those who aren't aware, this season they've implemented rankings as banding as well for the categories. So riders who are below the ranking points, it's the ZwiftPower ranking points, and for this B+ division it's 125 ranking points. So riders who are below that threshold will have to ride up, because they've clearly shown in races that they're strong enough to ride in the division above. They may not do fantastically, but they're definitely strong enough to compete. And that's the whole point, rather than blowing apart these kind of fields. And so you might notice a lot of the usual suspects in the B+ division aren't there. But it seems to be making it a bit more balanced so far. New winners, a bit more variety, shall we say, which is good to see. Stray building there. So this lap we're going to have a first across the line segment. Just get up. See if we can get some of the points up for you. Maybe not the neatest animation there. But here's your first across the line points and fastest through points, just as a reminder from what we saw earlier. So you see we've got one of the KST riders pushing quite hard as we start this climb. He's got a 2-second gap. See Chile going across. Chile's been in great form of late, doing very well in interdirt racing. So he's just got across there. He's going to sit on the wheel, but we see a couple of other people. Greg Pierce responding hard. Barham from SDW coming across as well, and Coppens and Bizarre. They haven't quite got a proper gap over the group, and you said most of the group will come back. We see lots of the riders are getting there and then just relaxing again at the front. See Greg Pierce just sitting in. Barham's going. It's a good push. But it's only 3% through here, and the group is just a bit too close. Greg Pierce has found himself a bit in no man's land. I'd say he's about 9-8 metres yet there, back, and 8 or so metres behind him. So the group is very close, easy enough to catch him. But he's not benefiting from the draft for the SCW guy, so he really needs to push on. So he's just managed to get in the drafting range of the rider ahead. But the guy ahead's not, Baron from SCW, is not quite doing enough for this to stick. So Pierce really needs to push here, otherwise he's going to be reeled in by the group very quickly on the second half of this climb for the segment. I'll just take a look. Back as see most of the group are just being steady here. No one wants to do too much work yet. See it start lighting up around this corner. See, there we go from Pierce. He might just be doing enough. If he keeps pushing hard, see Huber pushing very hard to come through, but is Pierce going to hold him off? Getting very close to the line. 9.4 watts per kilo. The group's closing in. It's a very big push from Greg Pierce. Is he going to make it? It's going to be very tight. He's coming across the line. He just holds on with Ward in second. Chris de Grom from Beesdar in third, and 2 Cobra Kai riders behind. A couple more Valhalla riders there in the points. So again, good showing from Cobra Kai and Valhalla. Getting plenty of points across all of them, but fantastic from Greg Pierce. He got caught in a bit of no man's land, but managed to carry on pushing and just hold them off. The real question is, how much is this going to have hurt him though? He didn't necessarily need to do that much work to get points, and the riders behind won't quite have done as much to stay there. See his heart rate's in the 180. He's really hurting here, but he's managed to make it in the front group of about 20 riders. So looking back up the road, there is a big chase group, and then a bit of a strung out after that. See another Eagle Fang rider there. In fact, that is an Eagle Fang rider. I think there's been some kit issues here. See Watson from Valhalla doing well early, but just chasing down on this 2%. He really needs to push to get on it. Super tucking a bit too early. Maybe that was a dropout. But then after that, there's a very big gap. Very important for his team if he can get back on here. We've got one of the Cryo riders coming through quite hot. If he can get in his wheel and super tuck, he might be okay. But it's really important that he's closing that gap down before he super tucks. I don't think he's going to make it. It's going to be tough for Valhalla if he doesn't get back on here. He's doing well. He's got another rider's wheel, Baker from Cryo, but it's whether the two of them can work together to close this gap now. as the group ahead of them's closing quite hard, obviously desperate to get back into that front group. So for those who aren't aware, in terms of the scoring here, the top 4 riders for your team score points, but you can have up to 8 riders racing. And that's very important, because if you have the top 4 riders and then the 5th, 6th, 7th rider, say, that means the points for those teams below are going to be reduced massively, especially in the segments. One interesting hack that some teams possibly can go for is that you have a couple of riders really heavily just targeting segment points or just the finish, and then block out the rest. So have half your team going for one, half your team going for the other, and so it stops other teams from scoring on those segments, and hopefully one of those groups can do a bit better on the other as well and win overall. It becomes a bit more tactical, especially when there's fewer segments. But it's one that we didn't see many teams utilise too well, having the extra riders in last season, so we're going to see if any are doing so today. We've got, I think, 5 riders from Valhalla in this front group, having just lost one down the road. See, they're not going to make it back on from the looks of things. Then Eagle Fang down to 3 riders, I believe. Possibly 4, you've got 1 rider in actual dirt kit. Cobra Kai looking short there. Only 3 or 4, depending on who that rider on the far left is at the moment. And it's Craig from Cobra Kai, so Cobra Kai look like they will have 4. Level Vela with a couple, 3 I think, maybe 4. 3, SDW with 3, TFC with 2, and BZR with 3. So most of the teams have a handful of riders in, but they are going to be losing points. They're not going to have all 4 in this front group, which is going to cost them in the finish. Let's start the segment again this lap. There's no points available here. One thing that might be interesting, especially in the latter laps, is if people go for a long attack through here. So as we saw earlier, it was kind of, oh, we've got a bit of a dropout, sad to see. I'm not sure, is that a TFC rider? I believe it might be a TFC, it's tough to see, it's not going to be a course where they can get back on quickly. But one might be interested, through this segment, a lot of riders kind of tend to go quite hard, and everyone debates, oh, you know, are they actually, you know, do they think it's the wrong segment, are they just pushing the pace, what's going on? And that kind of sows seeds of doubt. If you see a rider going really hard on the wrong segment, lots of people will wait, and they won't chase instantly, and it's the perfect opportunity to go and get a breakaway. So it'll be interesting to see if anyone goes for it. The downside of that, of course, is that you've got this long downhill afterwards, so they really need to commit hard to get away. But when we start to see a smaller group, when we're looking about 20 riders, it's definitely a viable tactic, especially for those finish points. So we're on to lap 5 of the race. Looking at those riders still in the front group, some really strong guys out there. You know, so you've still got Greg. He's managed to hold on. He's put a lot of effort in these segments. He's got 2 podiums so far in this competition. It's definitely a strong rider. Raced against him a few times before. Some of the Valhalla riders who normally race, Anya, Simon, are both missing. Might be a couple of others who can't race, possibly for the ranking or just the time of year. But they've still got a very strong team, and with Greg seemingly firing well today, he'll definitely be one of the favourites to take first. We've also got Schmeck Jers from Southborough Wheelers, who's a very strong 13 watt per kilo sprint. Maybe a bit short in the actual watts, but quite a fit rider. He's been pushing a lot at the front as we've seen so far in the segments. Be interesting to see how he does at the finish. Haven't seen Sander Pricker too much so far. Cryogen, another strong rider. And there's a ton of the dirt riders who are there or thereabouts. Should be picking up good points at the finish. See Iron, he's regularly there doing interesting things and just trying different tactics out, which is always good to see. It's very much a rider who won't just sit in and just go for the standard finish. If he thinks there's an opportunity, he'll risk it, which is always good to see. And you've got to watch out for, especially on a course like it is today. So as they're coming up again, just remind you again of what we have points wise. And just get it and just, there we go. And so we're on to lap 5, and it's going to be the FTS segment. So as we'll see, the pack's already starting to spread out a little bit. Again, this would be a very good opportunity for some riders to push the pace at the front. We might be seeing this from the Southborough Wheelers riders. Barham is pushing it a little bit. So a great opportunity to break away or just conserve and not have to go all in on the sprint. Makes a very big difference when you're not having to sprint at your max just to hold on. It's one thing I'd really recommend finding out, especially when you see some of the courses that are being raced in other events, thinking the likes of Sprinters Playground, Neon Flats, riders courses, especially with Neokia, where they've got lots of repeated sprints. See one of the, I think is that another SDW rider bridging across? Is at level that is another SDW rider, Schmeck, going. So I wonder if this is a bit of a team tactic. We saw a similar thing happening again last lap. Them both pushing across early, but they're definitely going to be out of contention for the FTS points. See Johnny from Cobra Kai, I think he was first, or I think he was first on FTS last time, going very hard again. But you see he's found himself off the front. He's doing a lot of work here, 10 watts per kilo. He's dropped down a little bit as we come onto the downhill. He's going to have to push up again hard here. But he's out the draft. He's probably got a couple of seconds advantage so far. But some of those riders who started deep, you can see them coming through. I don't know if that's Pierce, possibly. Yes, it is Pierce coming through very hard there. And he's going to close that gap. And assuming Pierce started a bit further back, he's going to come through for those FTS points here. See a couple more of the riders from Cobra Kai coming through at the front. And Eagle Fang. See if we can get the FTS up again. It'll be showing both times, so it's not going to be very reliable. But it looked like big points for Johnny again and for Greg Pierce. So again, it's going to be very close between Cobra Kai and Valhalla. I'm not really sure what else went on there in terms of the FTS points. But it's one of those dilemmas. See, Johnny went a little bit too early. We've lost a couple of rides off the back again. And possibly more importantly, let's take a look at the front, but I believe we caught up those SDW riders, yep, all back in the pack. So the early breakaway probably saved them a bit, but it didn't work out in terms of actually getting away and staying away as a serious attack. See a couple more jumping back on. I think just losing Leach from Level Bella Racing there. Everyone else will get back on, so we're down to 32 in the front group. It's still a very large front group for this stage of the race, as we're on to lap 6. So the fatigue is going to really start to clock in now, especially on the climb. This is where teams probably want to start agitating, especially if you've got a lot in that front group. You might want to start, and you're feeling okay enough, it would be a good time to start just agitating a little bit, trying to drop other teams' riders so you get some real big finish points. And with Foul coming up on the, not this lap, but on the one after, then there's going to be lots of points if you can knock another 5-10 riders out of the front group. Be interested to see if any team's willing to really push it again here. So just catching what I believe is Julian, so his lapped rider up ahead there. If he's going to have any impact on the race here. He's doing enough to hold on. Roop's not going to fly through, he might be just waiting for his little photo opportunity. Just get a little reminder of the finish points while we have a bit of a lull in the racing. So you see it's big finish points for that those podium spots, and then a bit of a drop off, but a big drop off after 10, 5 points less, and then after 20 again it's another drop by 5, after 30 another drop by 5. So it's important to try and get in this top 10 place, and with 32 riders in this front group, if we can drop a couple more, it's definitely going to help those teams. See PCH, the front, don't know too much about them as a team. Setting the pace a little bit. Might argue that you want to probably avoid that. As a team with just 2 riders left, it'll be really poor for them if they lose another, not poor, but you know, bad for them if they lose another rider. See Burnham going again. He's been very aggressive so far, which is good to see. Possibly trying a breakaway here or just pushing the pace. Same as he did last lap. I wonder if we'll see Schmeck jumping across again as he did. And this lap has definitely got more opportunity to stay away with less chase, but he just needs to be going a little bit harder, I'd suggest. We're almost on the segment itself, and might be saving himself, put a bit more of a burst over it, possibly fake a points attack. He's got 4 seconds though. This is starting to add up as no one wants to do any chasing. This is a really good attack. He's not having to do too much. This is going to be well below his 20-minute, below his FTP. You know, at these numbers, he's bordering on barely getting into zone 2, so he's just dropping off maybe a bit too much on this downhill. If I was him, I'd be wanting to push. You know the group's going to be a bit quicker than you on this downhill, but he really needs to go aggressive now. He's got a 5-second gap. He's going to need more. He needs to push hard up here if he's going for a serious break. There we go. Just what we want to see. Now, possibly to some of those riders behind, it's going to look like he's just going for those points. See his teammate going to the front. Sometimes a very good tactic just to control the pace at the front. He's dropped down here. He hasn't really gained too much. I'm not quite sure why he's easing off. Don't know if he's got slightly confused about the points and which laps they're scored on, or he's just trying to do it just in case something goes wrong. But, you know, he's got enough of a gap here. If he carried on pushing, he might stay away. But he doesn't seem like he's interested. A couple of other riders are starting to chase down a little bit. See, Shinky from PCH and the BZR riders are pushing a little bit, although it's not really a serious chase. You see Bam here, he seems like he's caught in 2 minds. Sometimes he's pushing, sometimes he's not. And it's just making it a bit too easy for this group. You know, there's 31 riders in this group, 1 rider up the road. The sheer speed of the group is going to start bringing him back in, even if he's doing 4 down here. Whereas on that climb, when he was dropping back down to 4 after an 8.8 attack, he could have easily just maintained that for a little bit longer. Just over the lip of the time, and he'd be 10 seconds up here and able to relax. So he's just about holding this gap. But the real issue is where you lose the time isn't on the downhill itself necessarily, especially the short ones. It's when you hit the uphill afterwards or the flats afterwards, and the group just carries that speed. See Pierce from Valhalla, possibly sensing that this attack maybe has a bit more to it. And Ian from Cobra Kai moving as well. See possibly both marking each other, both having the same thought. See, so both super tucking as you'd expect. This is where we're going to see that gap start to come down, just around these corners. It was 7 seconds before on the climb. See Iron there dropping right to the back because of that super tuck, but you know, he's still in the group, and think how much he saved there compared to some of the other riders around him. Let's go back to the front and just see what's happening here with this attack then. So again, he's working quite hard. Maybe a bit odd to see his teammate chasing down. He hasn't quite broken that gap to Chili. Chili's doing fantastically there just to hold his wheel and react to him. But his teammates closed him down there. Not sure I'd be too happy seeing him after that. Unless this is a planned move. We've seen it a few times where they're both, one goes and the other chases down. Possibly he's going to try and help him here. Bam just seems to have dropped, and he's dropped that 5-meter gap there. So he's not going to be getting much benefit from his teammate ahead. They've got 15 meters or so behind to the group. So they're going to get reeled in here well before the segment. Seems a very weird attack there from Schmeck Jers from SDW. As his attack meant everyone behind saw Chili straight on his wheel. Everyone reacted to it and jumped on with them. Oh, just try and get back onto the group here. There we go. Sorry about that. And the dilemmas of constantly having to change around to see what's going on. So as we come into the segment again this lap, it's first across the line this time. We haven't seen any early attacks yet. Obviously we saw those attacks from SDW mixing it up a bit. But aside from that, there's not been too much. A couple of the Valhalla guys sitting towards the front. Well, we see all the Valhalla riders sitting towards the front. And there we go. Trey Ford going early. And Pierce seems not quite sure what Pierce is doing here. He's half following him, half not. Again, it seems like a lot of riders don't necessarily have this clear strategy in mind. If I was Valhalla here, I'd be doing exactly what I've done so far. Sending a guy up the road, just letting Pierce sit in. He's a great sprinter. Just let him sit in and chase down the wheels. Hold the wheels of those trying to chase down your rider up the road, and then coming through them on that last bit of the climb. Whereas there, he just did a bit too much early. Maybe he's done well after that, and they've done exactly as I'd hoped they would. But maybe just a little bit too much early. Seen lots of riders not doing too much so far for this climb. There we go. Really lights up to come up this climb. Pierce is quite far back. We see DeGrom, though, really pushing hard for BZR. 12 watts per kilo. Has he gone a bit too early? Not sure. I think he's going to hold off there. See Treyford for Valhalla coming through. And DeGrom, oh, 4-way across the line from Huber. One Valhalla rider, Pierce, Iron, Yusa from Cobra Kai. I couldn't quite catch who the other rider was in the middle of that. Oh, there's it's very tight for the first across the line points there, and well done to Valhalla. It's a good display of tactics. They didn't maybe execute it as perfectly as they could have to begin with, but it worked out really well for them. It's one of the key things, especially when you know you're leading. You can afford to do things like that, send someone up the road, make others chase, and then take advantage of their wheels. They didn't quite have enough to hold DeGrom of BZR, but they scored some big points yet again, and they're definitely going to be in first place going into the finish here. So there's nowhere we're on to the last lap. This is it. So riders are really going to be trying to conserve here, save as much as possible. They've just done a big effort for that first cross line. It wasn't too long, which is good, aside from one of the Valhalla riders. But it's going to be tiring. The legs aren't going to be fantastic. They just want to spin them up a bit here. Get some of the lactate moving around, get some more blood flow. And just conserve, getting their breathing down, heart rate down. Just really relaxing. See Baron from SDW has been attacking regularly throughout, calling out that he's not going to have another go. Suspect that that isn't going to be the case. See Chili sitting towards the back. Wouldn't be surprised to see Chili or Iron or Baron going long here. All of them have decent enough sprints, but possibly not to compete with the top guys. And they don't have a ton to lose on this course. It's a big group. They're still going to get points. I'm always of the thing, you might as well give it a shot. So it's a little 7% section. We've got downhill afterwards. There we go, Schmidt from KST. Sometimes I've seen them being the aggressors before. He's going off the front. Maybe left it a little bit late. He's got a bit of a gap, but I can't imagine he's going to stay away. He's pushing hard still. 5.9. If he can hold these kind of numbers to the finish, he's got a chance. See Pierce responding now. And just from DW coming as well. No one managed to grab Pierce's wheel, which could be a big mistake here if Schmed from KST can hold on. There's a good chance these two can stay away. No one wants to be the person to bridge across in this situation. The riders will just want to sit in, as we saw on the last lap first across the line. They want to sit in, maybe doing 6 watts per kilo on the segment, and then sprinting through on that last part of the climb. See Pierce pushing through now. Maybe he thought the 5 and a bit that Schmidt was doing wasn't enough to stay away, so Pierce seems to have committed all in now here. It's a big push from him. It's well within his capabilities though. See, it's slowing a little bit, it's coming into the downhill. He's got the gap over Schmidt, the all important 5-meter gap, and he's possibly seen those riders up the road that he can come through. There we go, he's just relaxing here. This is going to be it. We're going to see a big kick from Greg Pearson. If he doesn't take the win, he'll be very surprised. There we go. He doesn't have enough for a full-on kick, but 7-8 watts per kilo should be more than enough there. See DeGrom really kicking in the group now. Gonna follow him as he comes through. He's pushing through. He might just take it off Schmed there. Is he going to get in before the line? He's just saying, but Pierce going to take the win. DeGrom second. Oh, very tight behind. I think it might have been Ward from TSC in third. DDT, well, it wasn't DDT from El Velo, and Denise there from BZR in fourth. So it's going to be a great result from Valhalla. Greg finally taking their win after a third, second, and finally a first in the 3 stages so far. I just saw that first move wasn't the winner, but it was whoever could grab their wheel. People didn't quite react enough. I'd really like to see his people jumping onto Greg's wheel there. You know he's a big threat. He's done fantastically on the segment so far. If you see him moving towards the front, you've got to go with him. But people just wanted to sit up, and we do see this sometimes a bit too much. Riders are just wanting to sit in. They know the optimum tactic most of the time is just sitting in. This is an uphill finish. On an uphill finish, long attacks do work, especially if you can have a wheel for most of it. And that was so perfectly executed by Greg Pierce there. We're going to see if we can get some early finish results up on the screen for you. Not sure what we'll get on ZwiftPower. They're still just a little bit behind. Continue watching some riders on their warm down. See if we can possibly catch someone earlier laps. Don't think there's too many yet to finish. See a couple of riders further back. Sorry, I couldn't get this earlier. Bit of a chase down between Hofma of the Netherlands, Gunther of Cryogen, Hofma again. It's all about if we can just sit behind someone's wheel there when it's very tight. You're just going to come through them. Speed you carry into that base of the climb is really important. You've still got a couple more riders on the course. Take a look at Tommy here for Eagle Fan. Won the KST ride, so I'm not even going to try pronouncing that name. We've got another group a bit further back. See here, we've managed to come into the segment still together. You're not going to break another rider here unless they're really struggling. So there's Tommy here. We just want to see him sitting up, let the other rider go in front of you, and then punch through him at the base. That extra second or two of draft you get at the base there, we see is Oridson from KST's going early. If Tommy can push hard here, maybe he doesn't quite have it. He's left it a little bit too late, and see that 5 meter gap's broken. At 7 meters, Tommy's not going to bring it back from here. KST rider went a little bit early, and that was just enough. If you broke that 5 meter gap, that's the key. So KST rider took it there over Tommy. You're a little group of 3 here, 2 level velo riders, 1 the Cryogen riders. O'Brien of Cryogen, Collins and DDT from level velo. You can see what happens coming to the finish. The level velo rider DDT's pushing a little bit, but he just slows. He's hitting the front. Bit of a strange tactic there. Not quite sure O'Brien reacts. Is he going to carry on pushing through? So it seems like a couple of little punches here, but no one's really doing enough to actually cause an issue. To be honest, I think they're just wasting a little bit of energy here. It's very hard for the O'Brien for Cryogen here. If level work well together. Not sure if they're on comms, but you'd certainly want to be sending one guy up the road, as we saw earlier with Valhalla in the segment by points. Send one rider up the road, make O'Brien chase, and just sit on his wheel and sprint through at the finish. You can see from DDT, just want to be sat in their wheels here. And as soon as you see him go, punching up. It's just before this climb. There we go, he's done it perfectly, but does not have enough to live with that sprint of O'Brien. Absolutely incredible. 10 watts per kilo. DDT's pushing hard though, but he's just left it a little bit too late. He had those numbers, but he hit them too late. That gap had already opened up, and O'Brien's going to take it here. Really well played from him then. DDT just didn't react early enough. I'll just follow Julian into the finish here. He's got a little bit of a climb left, hopefully taking some more selfies. Again, that finish positioning is really important. It's an uphill finish, but you have the little downhill before, which changes the complexion of it a lot when you're in the group. If you're not in a group, it's a long finish ideally. You want to be going early if you can, especially if you can follow someone else's wheel, as we saw from Greg Pierce. But otherwise, you've got to sit behind a wheel and punch through, punching through at the base of the climb, just carrying that momentum up. For those racing other series like the ZwiftPower, we saw it a lot in Richmond. When you're on 23rd Street, the riders use their aero before the segment, carrying tons of speed into it, staying in the draft and punching through hard. By far the quickest through FTS, and usually took foul as well. It'd get a huge advantage at the climb, as those who were at the front used a feather perhaps, what most people would see as the best power up to use on that climb, just weren't able to keep up as they're strayed in the wind. And just having to do 2, 3, maybe even 400 watts extra even with the feather, because they're 70 kilometers an hour hitting the wind full on. Right, thank you for coming. On Tuesday we're going to have a double header, 2 races back to back, which will be really interesting to see. We're going to be on TikTok first, and then Lady Liberty in New York. TikTok, very flat TTT course, and it's going to be very important for teams if they can get all 8 riders available and make a big difference. It's a flat course, you've got a little climb out of Calder Saddle Springs, and then downhill afterwards. There's definitely time to be made up on there, depending on how you play it. Tactics, there's some dirt, only a little bit as you come out some of the climbs. And then you've got the long drag back into the desert. Be very, very interesting to see how people play that, how they pace it, when they save a bit for the end, how hard they go up. But then we see that, and then followed immediately afterwards by Lady Liberty on New York's brutal course. You can include the KOM, New York KOM, very early on. And while the segment itself is only maybe 3.5 minutes for some of these riders, we've got a big climb beforehand that takes up to a good 5 to 6 minute effort. For say the Bs, the As are probably similar. So it'll be very interesting to see how people manage that back to back. Now it might be the downside if you have 8 men in a TTT. Then how will you get on? Will riders be too fatigued later on for that? You watch Julian just coming through the line here, just over the 45-minute mark. Very good effort just to keep there, and he will get good points for his team, especially with only 42 races there. It really does matter to have as many as possible, especially if you're that last scoring racer. So we'll just take you on to the results on ZwiftPower now. Hopefully have some of them up. There we go, we've got the official results on ZwiftPower, which isn't the actual points. So it doesn't include segment points, but this is how it finished across the line. We saw a good result from BZR, but Greg Pierce from Valhalla doing very well. Markian with another good result, keep them in the top 5. Iron again doing strong. Schmeck, as thought, did very well. SDW up there. And then we get a couple more of the Valhalla riders in 10th, 12th, and 16th with Jason Lars and Matt Parry. Looking at the other dirt riders, might be chasing them with Cobra Kai a bit further down. Be interested to see if they manage to do anything there, but I think Valhalla should have the win overall there. Be tight between BZR and Cobra Kai in second. Cobra Kai definitely having more points in the segments, but BZR with much stronger finishing. Go down the order. Thank you very much for joining us. As I was saying, on Tuesday we'll be covering back-to-back stage. We'll cover some of the morning ones, hopefully, as well, in the other time zones. And then we'll hopefully cover this B+ division again in the evening. There'll be other categories in the morning. Thanks very much for joining us, and it's been a pleasure.